is it not that they are getting to the right place? Are we not heading to the right place with this? That the House of Reps are passing 60 years age limit, and then Nigeria lawmakers making a bill that seems to be like, well, we're making Nigeria to the parliamentary system again. When you look at it, have we not heading to the right destination?
Well, that's why I said earlier on that all of this appears to be like an agenda, a personal agenda of maybe the people.
The president is above 60 years.
That's the point I'm just coming to. That's the point I'm coming to. That if we are to follow this, 2/3 of those who are senators today, 2/3 of them should be out of that house.
It's not for the lawmaker. No. I think it's for the president.
We cannot have a National Assembly that is a retirement home for expired governors. Governors that have been tested and had failed. We cannot continue to have the National Assembly as a house for politicians who are discredited. People who should be facing the EFCC or facing the ICPC and all of that. We cannot have, and these men don't have anything, anything to provide for the nation. That's why they are dancing around national questions. That's why they are dancing around issues. They don't have foresight, they don't have vision, they don't have any mission. They are just there just to share money and all of that. If they are really genuinely serious about the state of the nation, they will be addressing the national issues, just like my good brother have just said earlier on. Issues of welfare, for God's sake.
But everything starts from the root.
No, this is not the root of our problem, please. And you see, when you begin to legislate what age people should be in political office, what you are doing is that you are violating the rights of certain persons. All right, you are violating the right of some people. And when you are talking about some of these offices ordinarily, like governor, like presidency and all that, I am not the kind of person, even though I believe that young men should participate and be actively involved, but I believe that somehow too we also need men of experience, people who are elderly, who can guide the nation. But the truth of it is that Nigeria had been unfortunate to have elders who don't know where they are going. Elders who are themselves an impediment to national development. Elders who cannot live a righteous life for us to see. Elders who are not exemplary in their attitude, in their character, in the way they conduct themselves. And that's a national question. It's an ethical question. It's a question of national ethics. It's a question of integrity. It's a question of credibility. So that's what I think we should be addressing, not the question of legislating age. Of course, most of the young men that we have today that are interested, how much effort had been done by those who are old people to admit them, to allow young people to come into governance? How much effort? We don't have it. But I'm not against any particular age to say they should be excluded, because what you are doing now is exclusion. I believe in inclusion. I don't believe in exclusion. Because when you exclude, you violate rights. But when you include, you protect and promote rights. So that's where I look at it. So I just think it's a misnomer. What is going on now is dancing around the circle. All right? You don't want to address the real issues involving the Nigerian people, but you want to be wiping on all kinds of agendas to retailor Nigeria to suit some private agendas of some people. That's what I see going on now.
There was a Confrep conference, which has to say that Nigerians are involved, the youth are involved. Is that not a step?
The youth are not yet involved. That conference have not taken off. Nobody is sure about what will happen in that conference. Nigerian youth are not even interested, because you are developing a policy on one side and you are doing something contradictory on the other side.
Sorry, are you making reference
duplicity
to the Confab conducted by Jonathan?
No. It's talking about the one that is being planned.
It's yet to be conducted.
Yes, it's yet to be conducted. So there is no hope in it. All right?
No, there was a meeting with the president on it.
Obviously, they have constituted the panel.
The panel, yes.
Constituted the committee for publicity, mobilizations, and
but not much work is going on.
They are yet to set a proper date, timeline for when it will kick off.
The way I look at this government doesn't like consulting the Nigerian people. And this National Assembly and the presidency are in a league. They are in a league to impose certain agendas on the Nigerian people.
When you say Nigerian people, is that not the same like a public hearing?
No, we are not talking about public. You see, when you want to, the issue is this: lawmaking is different from constitutional making. All right, lawmaking, when the National Assembly is to make laws for the good governance, public order, and security of the nation.
Okay.
But where you are now tackling issues that has to do with geopolitical structure of a nation, how the nation should be organized, how the resources should be allocated, these are high constitutional issues that the National Assembly cannot deal with
alone.
There has to be consultation with the Nigerian people, because fundamentally you are changing the structure and the form of a nation. And before we arrived at presidential system, there were a lot of consultation and discussion nationwide. Okay, and all of us agreed that we should abandon the parliamentary system of the First Republic to have a presidential system. So if that is going to change, it is still the Nigerian people who decided it that should change it.
Who are these Nigerian people?
All of us. We have to discuss it, whether we actually want it or not. It's not a job for the National Assembly. The National Assembly should facilitate a national discourse of all the various ethnic nationalities that consist of Nigeria, and then discussion should go across board. Then when that is done, then the various representative of the people will now push it to their state assemblies for resolutions. And after that has been done, 2/3, that's what the constitution says, because our constitution is very rigid. Most of the amendments they have been doing today are just shenanigans. The National Assembly will sit down and just pass things, and president will assent to it. That's not it. It's unconstitutional. If you look at the provision of the constitution, they are supposed to take some of these issues to the various National Houses of Assembly of the Federation.
For town hall meetings.
Yes, there has to be town hall meetings, there have to be discussions. Then 2/3 of the majority of the Houses of Assembly must pass that resolution before it can become accepted as a proposition that is nationally,
I will say that's been done for the creation of states.
So why are they not doing it for this other one? Now, and what we are proposing now is not even a parliamentary system, if you ask me.
What do you call it?
Because if you want to do a parliamentary system,
okay,
all right, then you have a structure where everybody in government will be elected, and it is the party that constitute the majority in the house that will produce the prime minister and the government, while the other party will be in opposition. That is a structure. Executive power, all the executive power resides in the prime minister, not the president. But this one that they are proposing is an aberration. You want to have a situation where the president will have executive power and the prime minister will just be almost like
that's why
the head of government.
But
let me go, Mr. Taiwo.
That is not a parliamentary system, neither is it a presidential system.
Mr. Taiwo, don't you think this you'll be able to checkmate the government on this? Don't you think so?
Well, thank you very much.
Let's not be sentimental about it. Let's not be political about it. Let's look at the intention, the sincere intention.
We don't know that intention. Do you know the intention?
Maybe for the good.
The National Assembly have not discussed it. We don't know.
Maybe for the good of
Nigeria. We don't
Nigeria.
know what they are telling themselves.
Of course.
Why they think it's necessary to impose it on us. We don't know.
Mr. Taiwo, don't you think it's just going to make
the bottom line is since this current Fourth Republic that took off in 1999, we have done 26 years thereabouts of unbroken democratic practice, which is very beautiful. And yet, we continue to apportion blame on our military, that the military gave us the Constitution 1999 that we have been using all along. Are we saying that we have not had a better chance to really look at our Constitution and do away with some sections that we think maybe are not forward-looking or are not progressive enough? And we have seen over time constitutional amendment, but it's like, and most of them are done in piecemeal. If you permit me, the current state of emergency declared in River State. I've listened to a couple of lawyers. Thank God again that we have Barrister Olaleye in the studio. that section 305 of the Constitution, some lawyers argued, and that's the reason why they faulted Mr. President in removing the governor of Rivers State, suspending him from office for 6 months. Their argument is that section only talk about the declaration of state of emergency, that it does not give the president the power to really suspend or remove or sack, as the case may be, elected officials of the state. And we have also seen the second leg of it. The sole administrator also sacked all political appointees in Rivers State.
And he has no such powers.
I was even coming to that. So that section 305, I think the National Assembly will do us a lot of good by considering that section in this current constitutional amendment that is currently ongoing. Because some lawyers have argued that there is a lacuna, and that section is also not explicit enough. That it didn't really say whether the governor should remain or whether the president still have the power rather to remove or to suspend or to sack, as the case may be, elected officials of the state. There was no argument about whether the president has the power to declare a state of emergency. All the lawyers that I've listened to agreed that the president has that power. Although some said what has happened, the development in Rivers State does not even warrant that declaration at that point. But there are always two sides to a coin. Maybe the way you are looking at it, I'm also looking at it from another point of view. That could be the reason why the president was, I'm not speaking for him, maybe was somehow proactive in saying that I don't want to see Rivers go up in flames before I do the needful. But what I'm really pointing out is the need for that section to be looked at again. It needs to be explicit enough to say whether the second leg of it is when that declaration is made, the governor either should remain or should go. Maybe at this point, let me leave it to the lawyer to really educate us.
Let me just say one or two things about that section. Section 305 does not really give the president to make a declaration, but a proclamation. Okay. All right? Now, and the Constitution puts it there that proclamation can only be by the issuance of a gazette. A gazette. He will have to prepare a gazette before he even talk about it to the nation. Before it comes out, he has to prepare a gazette. All right? Then, after preparing the gazette, publish the gazette. He has to publish it and publish it for the Nigerian people to see it first and have access to it. That's why that provision said he has to publish it, the gazette.
Categorically.
Yes. Okay. Then that gazette will now be presented later to the National Assembly for approval. It is only after that approval
by two-thirds
of the resolution of that house that the president can now go ahead
and make declaration.
The declaration.
So that means the president put the horse before the
exactly. In fact, the man that was the appointed sole had been sworn in even before the Senate approved it. Even before the Senate. And
all of this anomalies, anomalies from the president.
It's not an anomaly because the president and the attorney general knows what they are doing. That's the truth. They know what they are playing, a political game on the nation.
But do you know how it's done in the military rule? I mean, do you know that in a military rule...
We are not in a military room. That's why that provision...
What is happening in Rivers State right now just seems to be like a military rule.
In an emergency, in a state of emergency, a state of emergency is declared to protect the people in the times of war or where there is total breakdown of law and order in any state. That is not sufficing in Rivers State at all. All right, there is no state of emergency in Rivers State, even though it has been declared.
Of course.
All right, yeah. But the truth of it is this. Now, when you declare a state of emergency, the only thing that you do, that you are concerned about, is not the governance of that state. You are concerned about the security of that state, because that's what the state of emergency is all about. The state of emergency is not to suspend the governance of a state. There is a breakdown in a place, and the state cannot manage, the government of that state cannot manage the affairs of that state. So the federal government in his might will step in to make sure that they protect lives and property and they restore security. That's what the state of emergency is for. In a civilian, it's not for you to put an administrator to be collecting the state fund and be spending. It's not for you to be reappointing SSG the way they are doing now, because the sole administrator has no constitutional power or constitutional right to appoint SSG. Secretary to which government? If you are appointing secretary to government, which government? His own government?
So the sole administrator.
Is he elected?
All right, Lakers, don't forget you can be part of this conversation. Yes, let's talk right here on Spotlight on Super 92.7 FM. Call us on the 0705 6900927, 0705 6900927, or the other lines on the 0903 714 2798, 0903 714 2798. The other all lines are 0802 978 8003, 0802 978 8003. Yes, we're talking about the RAP portion bill to return Nigeria to a parliamentary system of government, and also we're just trying to make a comment on the issue in Rivers State. Let's quickly, because of our time, go to a surprising talk right here about immunity. Well, do you know, have you heard, as it is right now, that the reps are pushing, and the House is under fire for what? For reversing an immunity withdrawal bill. Well, and the House of Reps came under fire yesterday for reversing its earlier decision on the removal of immunity for vice president, governors, and deputy governors. Civil society groups have been talking. So many have faulted the House decision. 2 bills on executive immunity removal and death sentence passed a second reading on Wednesday, with Nigerians expecting the parliament to subject them to a public hearing to garner stakeholders' input ahead of the third and final reading. Well, a deputy speaker presided over that plenary session, and the speaker, because the speaker was absent there, he says the vote phase on the bill was unable to house a conduct for more robust debate by the lawmakers. But before we go more into this, let me also let you know that one-time president, our former president, late Musa Yar'Adua, had also made comment on immunity for president, vice president, and governors. Well, let's hear from him all of this, and then we'll come back to make conversation.
I have confidence that the next constitutional amendment will strip these public officials of this immunity, and I am personally in support of that. So one of the measures we are going to take already, apart from the work the anti-corruption agencies, is to have corruption monitors. This is an instrument that will create, to help people train monitors attached to public officials. We are going to begin first with the president, the vice president, the ministers in the cabinet, the state governors, so that these monitors will be trained in the art of investigation. They will have access by law to the asset declaration forms. They will have access by law to their accounts. They will have access by law to their spouses' accounts and so on, so that highly placed public officials will be monitored. Their assets, properties will be monitored to follow what they are doing in terms of acquiring of illegal wealth while in office. Now, this is an extreme measure, but the situation in Nigeria actually demands this. The other aspect that we are going to introduce, all violations and disrespect for due process.
Violation and disrespect to due process. Let's also hear the Senate on immunity.
A bill for an act to alter the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to qualify immunity conferred on the President, remove the immunity conferred on the Vice President, the governors, and their deputies in order to curb corruption, eradicate impunity, and enhance accountability in public office and for related matters. Second reading. A bill for an act to alter the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to specify the period for the laying of annual budget estimates before the National and State Houses of Assembly and for related matters. Second reading. To grant citizenship rights to spouses of women from Nigeria, specify the minimum number of youths and women that may be appointed into specific offices and for related matters. Second reading. On fundamental rights and additional conditions for the proclamation of state of emergency by the President and for related matters. Second reading.
Mr. Taiwo Lakpade, I'm sure you had the former president, our late president, Mr. Yaradua, talked about immensely about the immunity right there. And then you had the Senate, the clerk of the House, reading the bills for second reading. Your reaction to this?
Well, you can see the clear departure from what happened during the time of former late President Musa Yar'Adua and the current administration, particularly the Senate. Yar'Adua was speaking more like a true leader, a just leader, a fair leader to Nigerians. And that's why he came out after his election that he knew quite all right that the election that brought him into office was also not good enough. And he was making all efforts to correct
the process.
to reform our electoral process. But unfortunately, it succumbed to death, which is normal for every one of us. I also want to ask a question. How many Nigerians are also aware that at the moment the National Assembly is also fine-tuning or going through a review of our Constitution? Because the Constitution, one of the criteria is that there must be town halls, there must be stakeholders meeting. How many of these now? I think they've passed about 32 or thereabouts. 39, review. How many of us are aware, except for maybe those who are informed or maybe journalists that are also following or also monitoring or covering the National Assembly? And these laws are essentially for Nigerians. They are not aware because the due process are also not followed. So what we have seen, particularly since 1999, I'm not going to just say of this present administration, is our politicians focusing more on what that we benefit them. It's what that will benefit them. That's what they focus more. And unfortunately, like I said, the essence of governance is for security of life and property of the people and welfare of the people. But sadly, the crop of members of the National Assembly focus more on bills, on motions, on every other thing.
Political issues.
That will be of interest to them, not the people that really, or they say they are actually representing. So it's quite unfortunate. And please, if you allow me, immunity, those who the writer of our Constitution, they have a reason for giving immunity to the president, the vice president, the governors, and deputy. Maybe they don't want distractions because they know that, and they knew quite all right the nature of our politicians, and that's why they allowed that immunity for them. But unfortunately, those who were even using it to protect have also abused it over the years.
I like
They've
that.
They've grossly abused that immunity cover. Because you can't prosecute them, you can only investigate. But when we even wait after 8 years in office, do we even see a proper prosecution in the long run? No, there's no prosecution.
And there was a time they were talked about declaration of assets. Governors, president. Yar'Adua even said it here that both the president and his wife, both the governor and his wife, the vice president and their wives, should
except for Sam Yaradua and former Vice President Osinbajo, how many of them have publicly declared their assets? Except for this same former late President Yaradua and former Vice President Osinbajo. How the needful